Okay. So, how would you say you originally became interested in Shakespeare? Was your first encounter memorable?
No. No, it wasn't. I'm sure my first encounter was in high school. I don't even remember what they had us reading, what show, a specific show it was. Yeah, I don't remember anything about it, but I'm sure we read at least one of the plays in an English class or something like that in high school. Um, I think, I mean, my first memorable experience with Shakespeare, child, I really couldn't tell you like early, youth wise. But I know it wasn't until I was of age in college where we had to read and do some classical work. And so I was a theater major. I was a speech communication and theater major in college. And yeah, so I'm sure we did some scene work and things like that. And it was cool, but it wasn't anything stand out about, right? So like right after I graduated college, or maybe I was in my senior year of university, that the late great legend Barry Scott, he hosted this workshop, and so the actors had to, and it was a bunch of people who maybe all of them weren't actors, so to speak, but they just happened to be doing this workshop. Why, I have no idea. But Barry Scott was really good at that, at bringing in people, and it was like this immersion thing that he kind of did. And it was just so incredible to get people engaged and comfortable and confident in a language, that's English, but in a language, so to speak, that they were unfamiliar with. So that was probably either senior year of university or right after graduation, where we had to, in that workshop, do a contemporary piece and a classical piece. And I was green, honey, green. And my classical piece was from Midsummer, and it was Puck. And I was this wiry, fiery kid. And I remember some of those days because I think it was maybe like a week or 2 week long period of time, that specific workshop, where we workshopped with him, and we kind of got into the language of the pieces and what they were about and who we are, and all of that kind of stuff. And then we had a performance at the end of the workshop period. And so I remember doing Puck, and I had never thought about Shakespeare like that, as being accessible. And so in that instance, it was accessible. I understood. It wasn't so out of reach. All of that means accessible. But yeah, so it wasn't. But that was my first memorable experience into the Shakespearean world.
That makes sense, because I'm just now getting into it and I'm a senior, so I understand that. So how would you say your relationship has evolved over all this time? I know you have so much experience.
Well, not as much as a lot of other people, but so the evolution of who I am and where I am as an actor from when I first started, it's leaps and bounds as far as understanding the technical aspect, where I've been involved and actually been in staged productions of Shakespeare. I'm still on the learning curve. And I think as an artist and as an actor, you have to constantly be working, and this is just as a person in general, no matter what field you're in, but working in general to shift with the times, to take some of what makes Shakespeare so great even now, with the colorfulness of the language and how it kind of moved you, and just how beautiful the words were. And yeah, so I'm still on that train currently, but as a spectator and just as a person who appreciates what that language is, I feel like I have my understanding of the language has evolved. And I know this is kind of going into one of the other questions that you asked, but my first show, professional show, was 12th Night, and I was cast as Countess Olivia. Now, what a lot of people don't know, and that was only about maybe 6 years ago, right? The same season, maybe like months before, I had just done that exact same role. Did I know what the hell I was doing? Absolutely not. But I had just done that exact same role with a community theater. Now that was like crazy, right? It was crazy. The people who were in it were nuts and insane. I had an amazing time. Yeah, I mean, it was just a discovery period for me as an actor coming out of college, and like, I can do anything. It was that whole kind of thing. And so when I got on the professional stage with that, I still had no clue now. And I should cringe at some of the choices that I've made as an artist and some of the things that I've done. And I've said this a couple of times to good friends. I should be embarrassed by some of the things that I've done, but I'm not, because of who I am. I learned so much from everything that I'm not embarrassed by my learning curve. But from that specific show, that first show that I did with Nashville Shakespeare Festival, I still had young people coming up to me, and now those young people are grown. They're probably your age, graduating from university. But I had them coming up to me years after, being like, "Oh my God, you were the princess. You were the Black princess." And I didn't think about it at the time about being a Black woman in roles that were traditionally played by white men. I didn't think about it in that instance. But I'm so grateful that I got to be that representation to a lot of people that looked like me, who had never seen themselves on stage, especially in shows like that before. So sorry, I kind of like.
No, that's great. It's actually perfect, a perfect segue, because you're talking about your experience influencing as a Black woman. But how would you say that being a Black woman has influenced your career in theater or the Shakespeare? Has it been impacted by gender, by race, however?
I mean, absolutely, especially where I am. I'm in the South. I'm in the Southeast part of the United States. Absolutely. The Black actors here had a running joke, and this was not only for the Shakespeare companies, but just all of the companies in general. And this was maybe about about 10, 12 years ago. It was a running joke that we knew we would work in February because it was Black History Month. And so the Black show would and they just did it. And I don't know if they white minds thought that they were just, they were doing us a good service or something like that. But we knew we would work in February, right? Yeah. And then it was always this whole thing about what it was going to be. It was either an enslaved person, right? Someone in servitude, some downtrodden, I need what the white man has kind of thing. And that went on for years, and probably even before I came onto the scene, that was prevalent. Even I talk about Barry Scott, who was a phenomenal actor. He just passed in 2020. Amazing actor and teacher and mentor. And he came up, he was a Black man, came up in Nashville. He was from Nashville. And I didn't realize him, another Black, older Black actor here, Jackie Welch Schlicker, and then Connie. They were all these amazing, as I know, in my generation. I look to them and I'm like, man, like they are phenomenal actors, directors, singers, right? And I talked to them. I worked with one of them a couple of years ago. We were in A Raisin in the Sun together, me and Jackie Welch Slicker. And I was talking to her, and it was a picture. They were putting older pictures on the wall from 20 seasons ago on the walls with that particular company where we were working. And I was like, oh my God, look at you guys. Look how young y'all are, how vibrant, y'all must have done so many shows. And they were like, mm-hmm. And I didn't know what that meant. And so we talked later, and it was basically, I keep looking around, I'm sorry, because I'm in a parking lot. But we talked later. It was because, yes, they had been cast in shows, but they were often in the ensemble and never with a lead role of things. And that was so bizarre to me because of who I knew they were and the talent I knew they had. And I could just about imagine what they, 30 years ago, the vibrant energy they had with youth, right? And so that broke my heart. It broke my heart because I'm thinking these people have come up working. So anyway, I say all that to say, the scene is slowly changing. The companies themselves are evolving. It's, a slow process, but it is better now than it had been. But yeah, so I cannot remember what your original question was.
No, just your experience as a Black woman in theater.
Oh yeah. So evolving, and I was always one of those types of people who I didn't ask for. I walked into a door, right? And I've been very fortunate that way as well as a Black actor, and I've been fortunate enough to have Black friends who are actors, playwrights, and company owners. They formed their own companies where I got to work and kind of get my licks in as a young actor before I was cast on the professional stages. So yeah, I mean, it's slowly evolving with most of the companies here, and I'm grateful for that, but it was not always like that.
No, it's making me think. I'm not sure if you're familiar with American More by Keith Hamilton Cobb, but in it, he kind of talks about how he's automatically assigned to these traditionally Black roles like Othello, and not having access to other non-Black roles. Are there any roles that you think you didn't have access to because of this?
Me specifically, no. And I just say that because again, I came out of the gate as Countess Olivia, right? A freaking princess. And so not really, but I will say, I auditioned for those companies here, the professional companies here, equity companies, for maybe 8 years before I got cast in anything. And I'm not saying that maybe I wasn't ready as an actor to be cast. Who knows what all of that is. But I worked my ass off for 8 years before I was even cast in an equity show. And it was, mind-boggling. The amount of time that I put in and crafted, and able to get myself in a position to where my first show I would be cast as the Countess. Now, do I think that there's enough representation on these stages? No. They're still heavily produced by white men and women. And oftentimes people don't realize that I am so used to walking into a room and being one of the only, right? They don't have to think that way. And so I don't think for many years that it was like, oh, we need more representation on stage. They didn't think about it because their world was whiteness. And that, that's just not my experience. And so to still go and be in a show where I'm one of the only, that, I'm just like, really? You know, now I understand like historical things and things of that nature. Like I read saw a couple of years ago, there was this white professor. I guess he was a professor, but he was directing a show at a college, and I think it was in North Carolina. He was directing The Mountaintop. Are you familiar with that show?
Oh,
Katori Hall, and so it's Martin Luther King. It's a two-person show. Yep, two-person show. Martin Luther King Jr. And then a fictional character, Kame, who's a black woman.
oh, I am. Yes, I actually read that.
Yes, brilliant piece of work, right? This white director thought it would be a good idea to double cast the show. So he had two separate casts. So in one cast, it was a black guy playing Martin Luther King and a black girl playing Kame. And then in the other cast, he cast a white man to play Martin Luther King because he thought it could be. I'm like, first of all, no, sir. Certain things just should not fucking happen. Okay. Yeah. Certain things just should not happen. And I don't care what artistic license you thought you were taking. I'm like, there are so many fucking roles for white men that they don't need anything else. Okay. If we didn't write another role today, they would be fine. Right.
That's true.
And so like that, certain things like that is just inexcusable. And I just don't agree with. Now, all of Shakespeare was traditionally played by white men. It wasn't even played by women at first. And so now, of course, that is not the case. And so do I think there should be a white Othello? No. But, you know, they have Hamlet and Macbeth and like all of these other things, which I think are free reign. They have, you know, Twelfth Night, which they're fucking fairies and like turning heads into donkeys. Like it is fictional, right? So it's fictional. And so there's nothing to say what color these people should be. Now, traditionally, they were a certain color because that was the people that he knew and where he grew up, you know, and were there people of color? I don't know. I'm sure because we're everywhere, but I understand location wise how these characters were traditionally represented. And I don't think that there is not a space that a Black person couldn't feel in any of these shows. So I'll just say that. You know, now Henry V and like all of those that are based on real kings of the past, I don't know. You know, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but you know, I'm just one person.
And so that makes me want to ask, are there any roles in the future that you hope to work with, hope to be cast as?
I'm terrible with that question. Every time someone asks me my favorite book or a favorite movie or a role that I never know. I'm just, there's so much out there. I just always find it so hard to pinpoint. I love to be stretched as an artist. And so I'm like, whatever someone tells me that I can't do, I'm going to do it. And so that's just the kind of person and artist that I have been and I will continue to be. Yeah. So no specific roles or shows.
Fine. We kind of spoke about this a little bit. You're definitely anti centering white men, and I agree with that. What do you think about Shakespearean plays and contemporary? Are there any plays you think should be paused or censored? Because I know in class we talk about Black trauma playing Othello, or characters like that. So where do you position yourself?
Yeah, censorship. I'm not a big fan of censorship. Actually, what I do think should happen, and it starts in the rehearsal hall, when you're rehearsing in the rehearsal room, is there conversation should be had. So in Cymbeline, is it Cymbeline? I can't remember which show it is with it's literally a Black slave or an Indian slave. I can't remember in this, and they say it, and they talk about that character's Blackness. Almost said the Cimmerillion, that is J.R.R. Tolkien. I can't remember what specific show that is, but they talk about this person's Black skin. And I'm like, yeah, but like let a conversation be had and be intentional with what you're doing. Be intentional, right? And if you're gonna do something, like do a good job. Don't just pussyfoot around something and be scared of approaching the subject. I think when conversations are had and there's a real plan for those kinds of things. So if yeah, so I in Henry V, was it Henry V? Yeah, like they're supposed to be brothers or something like that. I don't know. I just feel like if you're doing something, be intentional with it. And with that particular role, and then even in like what is it, 12th Night? No, A Midsummer Night's Dream. So even in A Midsummer Night's Dream, one of the something happens, and I can't remember, but they mention color a few times, and I'm just like, be intentional. Now, do I think the little slave boy? Oh, yeah, I think it's in Midsummer. It was like the little slave boy, the child got taken away from the mother, and it was like a little slave boy, I guess. And in our production, that the kid who played that character just happened to be Black, and so it was like, is this what we want to do? Is this the story we trying to tell? Like this, and so it was a thing where, I'm sorry, it was a thing where as directors, artistic directors and people like that, you have to be intentional and say, is this a message that I want to send? So I think when conversations are had, now if somebody has a conversation and still makes a wrong choice, that's on, but I think conversations need to be had and people need to be intentional by what they're doing. Yeah. And I did a show where, had I been offered it today, and I've done a couple of things like that. Had I been offered it today, would I have done it? No. Or maybe I would have had a conversation and their mindsets would have shifted. And that was one of the Shakespeare shows where they said it. They did a contemporary kind of setting, and they did it where it was in the South. They based it in the South, and so the Black people were like enslaved. It was crazy. I don't know. I can't even remember like the whole premise, but it was like, would I do that shit today? Absolutely fucking not. And then what I would do was ask them, why did they need to do that? Like, what was the point in that? What message were you trying to send, But then like, it was an experience that I had, and now I know better. And then I didn't. And it's not that I wouldn't have voiced that then, but I didn't even think about it like that then, So, yeah.
No,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think intentions are very important, and I think that conversations do need to happen, especially with race. It's so easily to be taken out of context or
Yeah.
misinterpreted and just harmful. So that makes me want to ask, looking at the roles you have played, what is it like preparing for those kind of roles? I know with a different time period, Shakespearean is usually a bit of a challenge. So what is that like?
I always have. It is so intimidating. Just as a person, I think as people are, unless you're in that world, it's intimidating because it's like, what the fuck are these people talking about? Like, what are they talking about? And so my experiences have been really awesome, especially working with certain directors. They have this style during the rehearsal period where you do table work. And so you spend maybe a week at the table, not even on your feet, not memorizing anything, but you spend a week at the table in the text, learning what this person, even if it's not even your character, but just learning the workings and what does this word mean and what did it mean during that time, right? And so I've had so many discoveries that I'm just like, whoa, it is amazing to understand something, to know what somebody is talking about. And then I'll also put that in the context of teaching. So one of the guys, he is an amazing artist. His name is Santiago Sosa. He wrote this 4-person Shakespearean conglomeration. So it was like a lot of the plays mixed into one in an hour. And it was 4 people. So it was me, him, and Santiago's Mexican, this white girl named Becca, and then this white guy named Everett. And it was the 4 of us, and we just played like all of these different characters and scenes and like all of that kind of stuff. And we did it for schools, and we did one at the detention center. So where the juvenile, and he broke it down in a way where it was accessible, and they, even if they didn't understand everything, they knew what was happening, and they felt a part. And we put it on the floor, and it was like mobile. So we went around and, with a chest, and had like maybe props and things like that. And so I think that is so important to do, not just have your kids read it, but make it like constructed in a way where not only are they hearing the words, but they're understanding and taking something away, and then asking questions. When kids start asking questions, you know that you're in the right place. And so we had so many of those where they asked questions and were so involved, or they had a certain response, and we knew that they were listening because of the response they had to whatever scene it was. So yeah, that is one of my biggest things, is because I remember as a youth when I saw certain things, and so many things I know I was a part of, but I don't remember shit about them because like they didn't make it. Like I was like, I don't know what the fuck the people, I don't know who you are, what you're representing. You don't look like me. Your life experience is obviously different than my life experience. You don't understand my socioeconomic background, like none of these things, right? And so that's why I think it's so important to put artists in places where they can touch people like that. Like people can always be touched by art. And I think, which is why I do so much appreciate Shakespeare, just by the lyricalness of it all. And all of the words. So in the hour show that I was just telling you about, he listed, it was a litany of words and phrases that Shakespeare invented in his writings that people still use every day and have no idea where it came from. It is so many, and it's astounding. When he first, I was like, "Are you sure?" And he was like, "Yeah." So I think that is so great. And when kids and adults like heard that, they were like, "What?" Like they couldn't believe it, as I couldn't. Even as an actor who has been in those works before. So yeah.
No, it's great. I'm glad to see. The fact that he could even make it more accessible and familiar, I think that's really impressive in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me want to ask, as like a performance coach, do you have any advice for people trying to get into Shakespeare, particularly Black individuals, particularly Black like youth? I know I'm new to it, so I appreciate anything too.
Yeah. So I know the company here, and I don't know if this is true for all of a lot of companies, but I think it's pretty widespread. So they have this, what do they call it? It's called apprentice. So they have this apprentice program. And I think a lot of companies do have this. So they have this apprentice program at National Shakespeare Festival in particular, where it's college age kids on down to, I think like 8, 9 years old, all the way up to college kids. And they can sign up, and they have scholarships. A lot of these places have scholarships where people don't even know, especially for Black and brown bodies, because of, this great movement of representation. And so they have these apprentice ships where you not only do you eventually get to be in whatever summer stock shows they're doing that summer, or the Shakespeare in the Park, not only do you get to be in those, but I guess it's maybe 4 or 5 weeks leading up to it, you're in rehearsals, but also while in rehearsals earlier in the day, you're in workshops, and they do things like the dialect coaching, the breakdowns, the warm-ups, the actor performance styles, like all of these different things with many different people, movement, like it's incredible. And so I would say definitely look for places like that where they offer apprenticeships, and many offer scholarships. You may just have to ask. It like I've never been disappointed with asking a question, because all they can say is yes or no. But if you don't ask, never know the answer, and you may miss out on a wonderful opportunity if if you can't afford it, which is a lot of inner city children can't afford. They don't have access to the arts, and so that's where the initial struggle comes from. Is just us not having access to the arts. And I've seen some of those kids where they come through, and I'm like, man, if I would have had what you have at your age, like who knows where I would be or what I've already experienced. So I would say look around for that, and then also reach out. And now social media is so prevalent now. I would say whatever market you find yourself in, reach out to. Oh crap! I forgot I have to go pick up a birthday. Sorry, but whatever market you're in, reach out to the Black artists in that market. And whether you do things like this, Zoom calls because of COVID, or ask them if they feel comfortable meeting you at an outside place for tea or something like that. And, maybe buying them like a $3 tea or something just to thank them for their time. I would say do that. Or even if they don't want to meet up and all they have is the time to email or maybe a phone conversation or something, I would say definitely do that with as many of them as you can. And typically markets are very, very small. And so when you meet one, they may pass you off to another after you get acquainted with them. And that's how you build a network. And that's how you work. Most of my jobs that I've had are from networking and the people that I know and the places that I put myself in, the positions I put myself in. So yeah, utilize your resources.
No, and I think in answering that question, you actually also answered how to increase Black youth engagement just by like giving them opportunities, providing them with the scholarships and the grants necessary. I know you're running low on time, so I'll ask you one question and then we can just wrap it up. So my last question would be, how do you see, or how would you envision future engagement with Shakespeare in theater? What changes would you like to see progress made towards?
I would just like to see people moving, holding their own feet to the fires, companies holding their own feet to the fire, and seeking out, if you see like your stage is just flooded with whiteness, figure out why Black and brown bodies don't come to your shows. Figure out why they don't know that they could potentially be cast if they auditioned. So many people don't go to things because they feel like, well, they're not going to cast me anyway. Like, I don't see anybody out there. I've never seen anybody out there that looks like me. And so I think it's the high time for companies to hold themselves accountable and make the change, right? And then, but also with Black people just showing up. So whether you think they're gonna cast you or not, show up and make them tell you no. Make them tell you no. Go in there, be prepared, be on time, be courteous to everybody. You never know who is who. Be courteous to everybody. And I'm not saying be false or anything like that, but there. It takes nothing to be kind. And so I say, if you can live your life like that to the best of your ability, but especially when you're in places where you are representing yourself and your brand. Yeah.
And I think that's a great and important note to end on. So I'm going to stop the recording.